Universalist Clarence Skinner, 1915. We accept the world for the joyous place it was meant to be. We like it, despite the fact that belated theologians look upon it with inherited suspicion. The dominant motive, therefore, is no longer to escape from earthly existence, but to make earthly existence as abundant and happy as it can be made. In 1924, after the 1918 pandemic and World War I, Skinner wrote this poem. In times of disillusion, the world has grown unutterably old, a place of bitter disillusionment, like some sad ruin out of ancient time, half buried in obliterating sand. So seems the gallant world of yesteryear to one who fellowshipped with wistful dreams. Fair hopes did blossom for a flaming hour, and they were radiant. Bright youth went forth in high imaginings, and all the world expectant and aglow went forth with them to greet the new age and new inbrothering. But now the heart of the world is broken and sad. The dream is spent, the curtains drawn, and those who strode to marital music spoke great words befitting those great days, have laid aside the mask of Jove-like visage and have shrunk to lesser mold to play the cynic's part. The candle that so mightily illumined has sputtered and gone out. The house where we held rendezvous with hope is dark. The dream is gone. The dreamers go in sad dismay to disillusionment.
Rows and flows of angel hair and ice cream castles in the air and feather canyons everywhere. I've looked at clouds that way, but now they only block the sun. They rain and snow on everyone. So many things I would have done, but clouds got in my way. I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's cloud illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all.
In the movie You've Got Mail, Joe Fox, played by Tom Hanks, snarkily says, "I could never be with anyone who likes Joni Mitchell. It's clouds illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all." What does that mean? This is actually a very revealing moment, not about Joni Mitchell or her work, but about the whole character of Joe, a man who repeats over and over again, it's not personal, it's just business, as if it were some sort of a divine gospel, and a man who lives that out, making ruthless business decisions, not caring about the human cost. The song, Both Sides Now, this is a song about disillusionment. And you can't understand disillusionment unless you've had some illusions to begin with, unless you've actually been able to believe in things like love and trust and commitment and loyalty. I know You've Got Mail is presented as a light romantic comedy, but if you look closer at that character of Joe, it's pretty tragic. It's clear that he hasn't known any of those things in his life before. One of the things that is played as a running joke is the fact that his father and his grandfather have had so many marriages and divorces and kids that they can't even keep track. There's this one scene where Joe's father is trying to remember which was the wife that he was cheating on with the nanny. That was Joe's mother. The paradox of disillusionment is that if we can feel it, it probably means that we were lucky in some way, that there had been someone or multiple people in our lives that gave us a vision of something better and gave us reason to hope in other people and in life itself.
Moons and Junes and Ferris wheels, the dizzy dancing way you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way, but now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go, and if you care, don't let them know. Don't give yourself away. I've looked at love from both sides now, from give and take, and still somehow it's love's illusions I recall. I really don't know love at all.
If you have been feeling disillusioned of late, there is ample reason to. What does agape love mean in the midst of a global pandemic? Our faith in humanity most likely had already taken several hits over the past 5 years as we saw some of the nastiest human behavior come out. Racism no longer being something that was a matter of dog whistles, but just out there, front and center. And now with the pandemic, so many of us can't believe what we're seeing, especially right now. Parents going to school board meetings and just viciously attacking others simply because they are being asked to join in with the rest of us in promoting the common good. And then there's the bigger picture of living through a global crisis. The kind of thing that you read about in textbooks, but you don't expect to happen in your life. It is completely natural that in amongst all of this, that we would be questioning what we have believed about humanity, even particular people whom we know, God, the universe, and life itself. And sometimes in collective traumas such as what we are going through, the hardest thing is not even the events themselves, but a sense of betrayal by other human beings. And so we are forced into questioning things that we have held to be true for so long, some of us maybe our entire lives. We're trying to figure out what to believe and what we should even put faith into, or should we put faith into anything? Theologians call it the dark night of the soul. And it's something fairly universal. It's Siddhartha when he leaves the palace walls and he sees all of the suffering that exists, and he decides that he has to go on a quest. It's Jesus going and spending 40 days in the wilderness, wrestling with the temptation to take a different path than the one that he is called to. It's Henry David Thoreau, who was devastated, brokenhearted after his beloved big brother died literally in his arms because of a rusty razor, dying of lockjaw. He retreated to Walden, in part to write up some stories that he shared of a trip with his brother, and to try and find meaning in life. Not everyone faces down the dark night of the soul. Some decide that it is too uncomfortable or too painful. And so instead they opt to become brittle, cynical, and jaded. It's easier to do that. But to face it head on, to deal with the discomfort, to face the pain itself, and to go even deeper, to try and mine that, to figure out, well, what is it that is worth having faith in? What is it that I do believe to be true? That's the thing where pastors and psychoanalysts will say that often some of the biggest breakthroughs, that's where they come, is by going deeper into our own disillusionment and not trying to steer away from it. It's very hard, but at the end of it, you do get a tremendous reward in the form of a deeper and more mature faith.
Tears and fears and feeling proud to say I love you right out loud. Dreams and schemes and circus crowds, I've looked at life that way. But now old friends, they're acting strange. They shake their heads and say I've changed. Well, something's lost, but something's gained in living every day. I've looked at life from both sides now, from win and lose, and still somehow it's life's illusions I recall. I really don't know life at all.
Now old friends are acting strange. They shake their heads and they say, I've changed. I imagine that all of us over the past 18 months have changed in some way. Psychologists will use the phrase loss of the assumptive world. It's referring to what happens when trauma, grief, forces us to face some of the things we've simply assumed to be true about life and the world, to question them and even to reject them. There is a loss in giving up some of these ideas that we assume to be true, and it's okay to grieve that loss as well. Something's lost and something's gained in living every day. There is something to be gained in all of this if we are brave enough to stare at the reality in which we are living and not shy away from those hard questions, to accept our disillusionment as another step on our faith journey. You heard Ray sharing some of the writings of Clarence Skinner as he went from young and so idealistic to having to face his own disillusion. But you didn't hear all of the second poem, because he faces that disillusionment and then he goes forward to make some choices.
Does God change masks when the curtain's drawn, put off high resolution, and descend to lower levels to play a lesser part? Not God. That cannot be. No, God's not through. There's hope immense to keep hope strong and thrill a dreamer's soul with battle call. God's unsurrendered. He's God in that. God's unsurrendered. So am I. For dreams outlast the dreamer, and when the great event is chronicled, 'tis vision will prove true, the final truth in all events, supreme and ultimate. Therefore I'll dream. I'll light the candle yet again, illumine the dark forsaken house, bring back the folk who thrilled at glimpses of a fairer world, people the stage with pageantry and bid full panoplied illusion still enact the epic of inbrothering. I'll summon from out of time's unfathomed store great souls who in the midst of hopeless days kept faith and knew the loneliness of God. Those splendid deaths and yet more splendid lives which rallied their faltering age with valiantness and left strong memories to breed strong hopes. For such undying fellowship has power to swell our shrunken souls to ampler moult and make us truer men. I'll still proclaim the vision splendid till it strikes God fire in old and broken hearts and urges on the world to consummate its dream. God's unsurrendered. So am I. Therefore, I will live communicate with hope. I light the candle, and I dream.
Unsurrendered. What a great thing to embrace. What is the vision splendid in which you still find truth and which you can commit as an article of faith in your life? Beliefs. I don't know about for you, but for me, they can change day to day depending on what I'm reading in the newspaper or seeing out in the world. Faith is something a little bit different. I believe faith is a choice. Faith is when we find something and we feel that there is a larger truth, a genuine truth that correlates with our experience. And we decide that it is something worthy of taking on faith and committing our own lives to seeing it come true. Yes, I've been disillusioned over the past 18 months at so much of what I have seen in my fellow human beings. And boy, it has been a daily temptation to fight against being snarky and cynical and just declaring, the world is garbage. But there's a really simple idea for me that I find enough evidence to support, and it's an idea that I am choosing to take on faith and commit myself to. It's the idea that most people are mostly good most of the time. There are going to be some days when I may not believe that, but I am choosing it as an article of faith. And so what that means, what committing to that idea means is that I have to live my life trying to prove that to be true through my own actions. Myself, I have to be mostly good most of the time, so that through my own life, I can try and make that article of my faith come true. I will fail. I am going to fail at that multiple times, and that word mostly, most people are mostly good most of the time. I'll fail, I'll acknowledge it, and the next day I'll go back to work trying to prove it true. What is something that you want to put your faith into? Something that you can commit to and allow it to shape what you do, so that you are constantly trying to be a piece of evidence that it is true, that your life itself becomes a testimony to this article of faith. It's hard facing our own disillusionment, our sense of betrayal, our heartache at seeing things that we don't want to be true. And it's hard giving up some of our assumptions. But having the humility to admit that we really don't know life at all, some religions say that that's the first step toward real wisdom.
I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow